Today, I have an amazing story to share with you. It's a story about love, marriage, and society. The people in this story live in a small town. In their world, marriage is very important, especially for young women. But the problem is, not everyone agrees on how to find true love. Some people marry for money, others for love, and some because society expects it. This story also shows us how people judge each other quickly, and how that can lead to many misunderstandings. In this story, we will see the relationships between different characters, and will learn new words and phrases. These words can help you talk about people's feelings, thoughts, and actions in everyday life. So, let's begin. Once upon a time, there was a family called the Bennet family. The Bennets were not very rich, but they had 5 daughters. The mother, Mrs. Bennet, always worried about finding good husbands for her daughters. She believed that the only way for her daughters to live a happy life was to marry rich men. One day, the family heard some exciting news. A very rich man named Mr. Bingley was moving into a big house nearby. Mr. Bingley was young, single, and very rich. Mrs. Bennet was thrilled and thought, "Maybe he will marry one of my daughters." At the first party where everyone met Mr. Bingley, he was very friendly and smiled a lot. He quickly liked Jane, the oldest Bennet daughter. They danced together, and everyone could see that Mr. Bingley liked Jane very much. But Mr. Bingley had a friend with him, Mr. Darcy. Mr. Darcy was even richer than Mr. Bingley, but he was not very friendly. He didn't smile much, and he didn't talk to many people. When people asked him to dance, he refused. He thought the people in the town were not good enough for him. One of the Bennet daughters, Elizabeth, saw Mr. Darcy at the party. She was different from her sister Jane. Elizabeth was smart and quick to speak her mind. When Mr. Darcy saw Elizabeth, he thought she was not very special. In fact, he said, "She is not beautiful enough for me to dance with." Elizabeth heard this, and she was not happy. But instead of getting angry, she laughed and told her friends. She did not like Mr. Darcy because he was too proud. She thought, "He thinks he is better than everyone else." This was the beginning of many misunderstandings between Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy. At that time, they both judged each other too quickly. As time passed, Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth met many more times. But every time they met, there was tension. Mr. Darcy still looked serious, and Elizabeth still did not like him. They had many conversations, but it often felt like they were not understanding each other. Mr. Darcy watched Elizabeth more and more. Even though he said he didn't like her, he began to see how smart and kind she was. But Elizabeth couldn't see this change. She only remembered how rude he had been at the first party. They were both stuck in their own thoughts. This is where we see how pride and prejudice, or judging people too quickly, can cause problems. They could not understand each other because of their own misunderstandings. One day, a man named Mr. Collins came to visit the Bennet family. Mr. Collins was a cousin of the Bennets, and he wanted to marry one of the Bennet sisters. He wasn't handsome or charming, but he thought he was very important. Mr. Collins decided that he would ask Elizabeth to marry him. He thought that, because he had a good job and some money, Elizabeth would say yes right away. But when Mr. Collins asked her, Elizabeth refused. She didn't love him and didn't want to marry him. Mr. Collins was shocked. He thought Elizabeth was making a big mistake. He said, "You will never find another man like me." But Elizabeth didn't care. She wanted to marry someone she loved, not just someone with money or status. Not long after this, something surprising happened. Mr. Darcy, the proud man who seemed to dislike Elizabeth, asked her to marry him. But his proposal was very strange. He said, "Even though your family is not rich, and even though I know I should not, I love you." Elizabeth was shocked. How could Mr. Darcy say something so rude? He was basically saying, "I love you even though I think I'm better than you." Elizabeth was very angry. She said, "No, I will not marry you." She told Mr. Darcy all the reasons she didn't like him. She also mentioned that he had been very rude to her family. Mr. Darcy was hurt and didn't understand why she rejected him. The next day, Mr. Darcy gave Elizabeth a letter. In the letter, he explained everything. He wrote about why he acted the way he did and how he felt about her. He also explained some things about other people that Elizabeth didn't know. For the first time, Elizabeth began to understand Mr. Darcy's true feelings. He wasn't as bad as she thought. Maybe she had been wrong about him. The letter was very important. It showed Elizabeth that she had misunderstood many things. Sometimes, when people explain their side of the story, we can see things in a new way. After reading Mr. Darcy's letter, Elizabeth started to think differently. She realized that she had been too quick to judge him. Maybe he wasn't as proud as she thought. Maybe he was just shy or didn't know how to show his feelings. Elizabeth felt a little guilty. She had been wrong about Mr. Darcy, but now it seemed too late. She didn't know if she would see him again or if he still cared about her. Her feelings were changing, but she wasn't sure what to do. This part of the story shows us how important it is to give people a second chance. Just when things were getting better, something bad happened. Elizabeth's youngest sister, Lydia, ran away with a man named Mr. Wickham. This was a big scandal because they were not married. In those days, it was very bad for a young woman to live with a man before marriage. The Bennet family was very worried. If Lydia didn't marry Mr. Wickham, the whole family would be ashamed. People would talk badly about them, and the other Bennet sisters might never get married. Elizabeth was sad. She didn't know what to do. She thought, now Mr. Darcy will never want to marry me because of this scandal. But something surprising happened. Mr. Darcy, the man who Elizabeth once thought was too proud, helped her family. He secretly went to Mr. Wickham and paid him to marry Lydia. He did this because he still loved Elizabeth and wanted to help her. Elizabeth was shocked. She never thought Mr. Darcy would do something so kind for her family. Her feelings for him changed completely. A few months later, Mr. Darcy asked Elizabeth to marry him again. This time, his proposal was different. He was kind, respectful, and honest. And this time, Elizabeth said yes. They got married, and both of them learned an important lesson. They learned that love is not just about first impressions. It's about understanding, forgiveness, and giving people a second chance. This story shows us many things. It shows us how important it is to not judge people too quickly. It also teaches us about love, family, and the mistakes people make when they are too proud. Most importantly, it reminds us to always try to understand each other, even when it's hard. By using some of the words and phrases we've learned from this story, we can improve how we talk about relationships, feelings, and misunderstandings. This is a story with important lessons for everyone. If you like this video, please click the like button and subscribe to the channel for more interesting stories.